After years of failed invasion attempts, a coalition force finally landed in the unguarded Otomo territories of western Honshu. It captured a castle without trouble and created a beachhead for further damage to the Otomo economy and morale to be inflicted. On the front lines, the news was better, with the key peninsula gradually falling amid more Otomo victories, and the first major push by the Takeda being repelled by the combined forces of Otomo Yoshishige and minor lord Terada Hisayuki. That was very impressive, General. My father was short-sighted to hold you in reserve. Thank you, my lord. Your brother said just the same. My brother will call my father a fool without any excuse at all. I do so only because the mistake offends a man of quality such as yourself. You honor me, my lord, but it was only my duty. A man who does his duty is the most valuable thing in these times, General. It is for that reason that you are unlikely to hear from Sugatsura again. I welcome the news, my lord. You were right to replace him. I'm glad you agree. Everyone else seemed to be wrongly enamored with him. His achievements were exaggerated, my lord. Yes, finally someone who sees things for how they are. I think we shall do well together, General. I only seek to use my skills in service to one who is worthy, my lord. It is my honor to destroy your enemies. I wager you were the only man fit for the job. Good that you were here then. There is plenty of work still to do. Of course, the books of statecraft all teach that a man who proves his worth must be rewarded. I need not ancient texts to know this. Consider your rank and estate increased, Lord Terada. I will make sure of it. That is all I could ever want, my lord. It's time for some more Barbarian Masters. We're currently pushing against the Saika. I'm sending Kobyakawa to attack their next castle, and while it's somewhat garrisoned and they do have some strength on the balance bar, in this case I'm just going to auto-resolve them away. Of course this means taking losses, but losses that aren't full unit losses are of course not important going forwards, and now the Saika are sufficiently weak that we can expect to not have to deal with any big battles at any point in the future at all, really. So we're just going to try and finish them off. That's our main project there, and it shouldn't be too difficult. Sugatsura and his cavalry escort have made it to the ships that are waiting to take him back to the west. His original destination would have been Kyushu, but with the situation in western Honshu, I thought he can probably make a quick stop in to help out his younger brother dealing with the invasion. We come across here another invasion that's on the way, discovered it by random chance while just attacking Saika ships. It's a single trade boat carrying a whole load of troops, so the Chosokabe being a bit dangerous here, but as it turns out, they're safe from us right now because we don't have enough movement points to get to the center of their zone of control. So all we can do is move forward a tiny bit to put them in our zone of control, so at least they're stuck there, but that is exactly the scenario that got us invaded, failing to deal with that last time, so we'll have to play it a bit more carefully. Now you can see here the situation on the front line is very messy indeed. Takeda armies all over the place, and I'm just probing now, looking at the lines on the map to see which armies are in reinforcement range of each other, trying to see if there's some kind of attack that might be viable. And I eventually decided that nothing is really going to be worth the risk in this case, since there's not very much to gain by attacking right now. Even though the enemy are relatively weak, they're still pretty strong. And in their turn, they actually come to attack us in a very dangerous sort of way. They send one army to besiege our castle, with the nearby forces not supporting, so that's the sort of very bad attack we like to see. We're also being attacked down here near Tanegashima. The boats that I have stopping the Tanegashima rebels from retaking the islands are suddenly being challenged by some Bokuboyas, two of which are already very damaged. They've probably taken sea attrition on the way here. So I had to fight this one to try and maintain the security of Tanegashima, and this time I was employing some more decent Bokuboya tactics, keeping them all together and using formation groups to make all of your boats move as one to focus fire down enemy targets, and overall the victory actually came quite easy. Had to tolerate some losses, of course, because the enemy did have the gall to fire back, but overall actually went quite well. It's the sort of naval battle that I might have just lost due to having no idea what I was doing, but it seems I managed to get on top of it that time. So now, moving into the next turn, we need to look at this Takeda situation. There they are, besieging the castle with their one army that's actually got their officers and faction leader in it. So we can just try and challenge them to battle, and they'll walk off, and they walk to the west because I attacked them from the east with Yoshishige's supposedly hidden army, although they did know he was there. And now he's further into our territory, but is also further isolated from his allies. Now all I need to do is a bit of movement point trickery, clearing out the castle so that Yoshishige can go into it, and then he can actually attack the Takeda right now, since he doesn't have to spend movement points walking around the edge of the castle. And we end up with this battle. We have tons of reinforcements, and I expected this to just be an auto-resolve, but they seem to have a lot of strength on the balance bar. I think it's because their troops are so elite, they're so high level, that their stats will actually be really, really high, so they're contending with our vast army of superior quality, in theory, troops. But we do have Sugatsura's cannons, so really, we're just going to sit back and blast these guys.
They're trembling, I bet. Led astray by a master who denies the Lord's word. Yes, now they will see their folly at the moment of their punishment. No finer can God's justice be. Hear the thunder of the Lord's will. Smell the blood he commands to spill. As they see the light now, flashing and burning and gnawing, they can only commit to their first and last prayer. A prayer for hungry carrion birds, for their bodies are not worthy of the earth. They imitate us with their old-fashioned toys. They reach for greatness, but I hold it above them, ever out of reach. Yes, that is how all Japan must be, reaching for my wisdom, reaching for heaven. I will take the head of Takeda Kazuyoshi, stuff it into my cannons, and fire it flying over the enemy's walls. And all will know that while we must bow to Otomo Yoshiaki as shogun, his son and heir promises even greater might. Even greater.
We did a hefty amount of damage to the Takeda as they advanced, enhanced by the fact that they stopped to form up for a while in the middle of the map, so we got many extra shots off compared to what it would have been if they just ran at us. I think they were also distracted by these little rear attacks I was doing with our reinforcements that came on behind them. We're not necessarily achieving much here, but we are at least tanking some of their mangonel fire away from the main army and drawing a few units away from their advance. And really I have no intention of fighting here. You can see I'm just withdrawing units once we get to the edge of the map. We're just distracting the enemy, making them not take part in the main fight that's about to happen right over here. And of course, many of these units are now depleted and demoralized by the bombardment they've received, and as they get close, that bombardment will intensify. Now our guns and our archers, of which we have quite a lot, will open up, and we do have a numerical advantage in general. So really, the enemy don't have any chance with this attack. You can see the balance bar favors us very heavily here, but they're still going to try. One of their secondary generals, they're leading the troops up the hill towards us, and they're going to be taking quite the bombardment as they arrive. A lot of them seem to be dodging away from the centre, but that's not going to help them out very much because our flanks extend very wide due to our numerical advantage, so they can't get around us. A few units do engage here, with me forgetting to put my archers on skirmish mode, but that's still fine since we've got guns and spears nearby ready to support these fights. We can easily outflank enemy units, so individual enemy units. And really I think we would have won the battle already if it wasn't for the fact the enemy have really high level troops, which really buffs their morale, so we will have to kill loads of these Ashigaru to convince them to leave. but we are going to be doing that with our superior numbers, positioning, and just about everything else. Their commander out here, the Takeda leader Kazuyoshi, is found by some of my cav, and he is killed in that engagement as even more cav pile in there, so that's going to demoralize the enemy, and everything's just routing by this point in the battle. The fight didn't last very long at all. Their last unit, some cav returning from the shenanigans at the back of the map, decide not to engage as the artillery start to fire on them. So that was a very clean and very easy victory. Most of the losses we took were among the reinforcement units at the back of the map getting shot by mangonels, which doesn't really matter, and the enemy's losses were almost complete. They did get away with a few troops alive, but they did lose their faction leader, of course, and all of those experienced troops. There's a subordinate general and some archers there who got away, and we do want to try and kill them, just in case they walked over to the west or something and started destroying farms or otherwise being annoying. So I'm going to use the small group of reinforcements here from this castle to do that, and fortunately that's no problem at all, even though this little group is terrible. The enemy are worse. So the Takeda's attack has completely failed, and the balance of power continues to slightly shift towards our favour. I think the Takeda may still have the advantage on this front line, but it's getting better and better overall as the turns go by. Now back over to this Chosokabe invasion. I took the plunge and decided to attack it because I really wanted to get these ships freed up. They sail off somewhere, and now it's just a gambit. Can we find them this turn? We need to know where they are. We could easily defeat that ship if we could see it, but sailing off randomly into the distance doesn't reveal it, and in fact I sailed too far. Now I can't get back to safety. So this Nanban trade ship will be forced to take attrition, and then I'll have to go back to a port in the future and repair it, so that's pretty annoying. We also now need to contend with the fact that we may be invaded this turn. The nearest place the Chosokabe can invade is this beach that this Takeda ship just retreated to, so we'll sink that Takeda boat and now just leave our stuff around the beach so that the Chosokabe can't use it, perhaps forcing them to take a longer route where they won't be able to make it this turn. Sugatsura arrives near Aki now, and he and his cavalry will pursue after Nagayuri's force, which has just started moving out to engage the Kakizaki. We can team up with him to give his army a bit more balance and a better commander, of course. It's still basically all archers, so we'll see how that army fares in the future. Some good news here, we finally managed to catch the Goto naval invasion that's been threatening us for a very long time, taking down an army and the last of their ships. I think they actually can't build any more ships because that incense port they've built doesn't allow you to make units. It just gives you loads of trade bonuses. I'm not quite sure, but we'll see. We've still got plenty of ships there to defend if they do start building up a new navy. Now on to the next Takeda turn. They're going to try another attack. This time they're going for Terada with their new faction leader, who isn't even a member of the Takeda family by the looks of things, so that's good news. We're depleting their upper classes. And yes, it's up to Terada to defend this. Yoshishige and his army aren't in range, but we still have a reasonable chance here, so we'll take this fight. Things are going to get off to a pretty messy start because both sides need to pull in their reinforcements, and the enemy are just going to attack right away without doing that. So things are just going to be very all over the place, and we don't even have our army actually facing the enemy's main advance right now. We need to gradually sort that out. There was an early fight here when some enemy Ashigaru who came onto the map right next to us met our Waco Raiders, pirates essentially, who are pretty good in combat, so we were able to win that little engagement. Now the advanced units of the enemy's main group first arrive at our formation, and they're going to be attacking pretty much entirely on our left flank because I haven't really rotated the formation properly. I've sort of started it, but hopefully what we've got there will be enough. Because the enemy aren't unified, they've got other units further back that I'm trying to kite onto my cav elsewhere so that we can take this slightly awkward fight and just still win it, because we will have local numbers on our side. We've got some firebomb throwers in the mix by the looks of things, just blowing up both sides most likely. What I'm trying to do here is move my centre to support the left, but broadly speaking we can't really commit to that because the enemy do have more units out there that can threaten our right, so we need to keep as much stuff as we can afford to in reserve. I am here committing some reserves, my heavy samurai on the left, who do a pretty good job of drawing all of these enemy range units into melee by just running through loads of them. Those explosions really rocking the camera there. You can see from the aftermath, it looks like both sides have been damaged by these attacks. Not really sure how well that's all going. An upside to having this battle be so messy is that our gunners here can actually shoot through gaps in the line, and that's pretty effective. Now, with our troops away fighting on the left, the enemy commander came and charged the centre where my archers were exposed. I had to run away, but I actually had sort of prepared for this. Terada has light cavalry behind him, and the light cav can now charge forwards to hit this enemy general, and that's the perfect scenario. We're going to easily defeat this unit, and it can't rout because it will be slower than us. So now their newest daimyo, the newest leader of the coalition, will also be killed.
You've done well, soldier. Leave the head here. You will be rewarded beyond anything you have ever seen for this. Well now, Lord Suwa, I bet you're regretting your little takeover now, aren't you? This is what happens to leaders who lack the ability to match their station. You were no use to your men, but to me you were like a wagon of gold. Lord Yoshishige may have taken the head of the enemy leader, but now so have I. No other general can boast this. Now all I need to do is get you to Lord Yoshiaki before his heir has finished parading his prize about the castles. It will be news of my victory that first relieves the shogun of his fears. You'll tell him everything, won't you? My trap, my ambush, my undeniable strategic genius. You saw it all firsthand, my lord. Would you like to keep your helmet? I suppose it would make an interesting gift. Okay, you can keep it, my little treasure. Look here, I've got a box all prepared for you. No head shall ever have been treated better, so you can wipe that aghast look off your face.
After a lot of unstructured fighting, both sides starting to look quite beaten up. Although both sides still have units yet to deploy. Here I'm using some samurai to prevent these enemy Ashigaru from attacking our centre, and that's going to be a pretty favourable engagement, of course. We'll just slaughter our way through those guys, and I think more enemies are heading towards the centre as well, so that fight's going to continue for a while. I'm finally getting some proper use out of my cavalry. We've stopped just kiting units and are now engaging them, destroying a few isolated squads here and there, so that's good news, but more importantly, we're getting some cav over to the main fight. With the enemy looking kind of shaky, a few rear attacks should be all it takes to get rid of them at this point here. Some unengaged archers going to be absolutely annihilated by a gigantic rear charge, and those cav will continue on to hit everything else, and this does work as intended. As the cavalry begin their attacks, the enemy chain rout across the battlefield. The losses inflicted there were just too much, and everything is over. We did chase the enemy down because so much of their stuff was reinforcements. This is a good battle to chase the enemy and manually play the rout phase to increase the damage done. Finally, things end in a close victory. The messy engagement and the not so high quality troops we were using across much of the fighting meant that we did lose nearly half our army to achieve that victory, but the enemy lost perhaps twice as much. And we only lost one full unit, as we see there, so in terms of replenishment we'll be back to full strength eventually. The enemy probably lost more full units and will have to re-recruit things, which takes longer and will probably have to be done elsewhere. So now over time we'll gain a bigger advantage as a result of that fight. Our naval patrol up near Noto discovers another naval invasion on the way. All we can do here is attack them, and that will send them off into the fog of war and the attrition zone. They may well still get past us from out there, and annoyingly I'm actually now stuck in another ship zone of control, and I can't get back to the non-attrition zone myself. Even trying the splitting fleet trick doesn't work. I guess you can't do it when you're in a zone of control like this, although I feel like I have done it before while in a zone of control. Not really sure what's going on there. So that's some very expensive damage that's going to happen to our ships now. As for the front line, as alluded to, I am just going to wait around and replenish all of my troops, because I think in terms of playing the long game, the advantage will come to us before it comes to them. The enemy are going to have to recruit a lot of things to get back to full strength. We aren't, and we should be able to attack them pretty soon. Just checking there to see if any interesting attacks are available now, but nothing especially easy on the cards. What I really wanted to do is come over here to the Key Peninsula and start clearing things up. Daihoji's had these guys guys under siege for a while, and they're starting to get pretty weak, and now I can pile in 2 extra stacks from 2 different directions to make sure that's a very easy win. With that place secured with minimal losses, our border will look a little bit less messy, and we can improve that yet further by actually attacking the place just to the west of it with the reinforcement stack. Not much of a garrison here, so we don't really need to gang up on this place for a pretty much casualty-free auto-resolve. And with this win, you can see the Saika forces are starting to be penned in along the coast down to the south. So now we're going to have them effectively choke pointed off, which will make things easier. Had the chance to recruit a new commander from the reserve army, but I actually need the money now, and I don't really need another commander, so I'm not going to bother at this point. With that sorted, there was one more fight to do, that is to send Kurokawa into the mountains here where there was another Saika settlement. Once we get rid of this one, the Saika really will just be choke pointed off from us. They'll only be able to attack us from one direction, and it's going to be the same for the Kitabatake to the east, but I can see from my spying that they actually have pretty much nothing in terms of military, so we're safe for a while. Really, I think the Key Peninsula is going to fall at this point. It's becoming inevitable as we've taken most of it. The remaining settlements won't be able to put up enough of a fight to stop all of these stacks that can just ravage the whole place and easily occupy it. And then, of course, those armies will be able to return to the front line and give us a very big advantage indeed. While I appreciate the help, it must be said that certain duties are going forgotten at the moment.
What do you mean?
If I recall the composition of your army correctly, then it occurs to me that you have all of your troops out in the field.
Is that a problem? It was this display of power that made the enemy surrender so easily.
Oh, I will not debate that, my lord. But as a point of information, I must bring up the matter of the civil regulations for newly captured territories. Until the church has firmly established itself in a region, the conquering lord is responsible for providing military policing of the relevant fiefs. In the case of Negoro, I believe that would principally be yourself, my lord.
They won't rebel, if that's what you're getting at. There are plenty of Christians in the area, and most of the Iki fanatics died in battle.
Ah, but that is precisely the problem, my lord. You see, these Christians most likely suffered quite the share of persecution for their views until now, and indeed the militant aspect of their opposition that previously prevented them from seeking justice or revenge is now gone. I fear that a state of general chaos is likely to emerge as many years of pain are expressed by a newly empowered demographic.
You're saying the Christians will rebel?
I'm saying you should have noted the possibility already and acted accordingly. I must then make a note of such a failure and report it to the clan.
That won't be necessary.
If it wasn't necessary, it wouldn't be the rule, my lord. It seems the Takeda are planning another offensive, this time putting a bit more effort into it, sending 4 stacks forward into our territory. They appear to be walking around my hidden armies, which they can clearly see, but it also seems like they're not quite heading for the castle. That one on the left, the leftmost one in particular, could have gone closer to the castle if they were going to attack it. That said, I'm still going to prepare our forces, presuming that's going to be the case, just changing our composition and the locations of the armies to make a castle defense a tiny bit easier if it is to occur. And now we will wait. We're not quite in position to attack the enemy. I'd rather attack them next turn, so we'll see if they attack us and give us a nice defender's advantage instead. Now, with Sugatsura and Nakayuri, I'm at the Kakazaki Castle, formerly our castle, and I want to make an attack, but with our army being mostly archers, it's in our favour to attack the castle rather than the army outside. And that's going to be an issue right here, because we actually can't attack the castle because of the army outside. The small force has its zone of control over the edge of the bridge we need to cross, so we can't get to the castle right now. That's a problem. However, we can still potentially overcome that issue. First, I'm just going to randomly assassinate one of the enemy officers to lower their morale and take 1 unit out of the picture. Then I can just advance with all of my forces to attack the guys outside the castle, since that's the only choice I have, and we'll be given this battle. Everything's going to sally out to meet us here in the field, which we don't want, but we can still try to destroy just the 2 units that are actually creating that annoying zone of control. If we can ignore their reinforcements and destroy their starting army, then we'll be in a situation where we can attack the castle if we just leave the battle. So now we're going to try that. All of my cavalry charge forwards with a fast unit of infantry, these bandits, to attack those first 2 units. It's Light Ki and Naginata Ashigaru, both anti-cavalry units technically, but just not particularly good ones, so I'm still going to charge at them with mostly cav. I'm sending my cav around to the flanks of the enemy's small position, while having my archers in the centre just distract them and bait them into an attack. They're Light Ki charge, but my Yari cav can hit them in the flank, a nice charge bonus. That's anti-cav versus anti-cav, so both sides in danger in theory, but my unit's better, and we of course have the numbers on our side. We can surround those light cav with more cavalry. We then get attacked by these Naginata Ashigaru added to the pile, but we still have more stuff to deploy, so now we're just going to throw even more cavalry into the blob, meaning that all of the enemy's units are completely surrounded now, plus we'll get a charge bonus and the enemy's morale is going to be dropping very fast. Those light cav rout, and that's going to help rout the Naginatas as well. And that happens pretty much right away. We have got them now. We'll just completely slaughter those Ashigaru. A few of the light cavalry did escape our encirclement there, so that could mean their unit's still alive. We'll just have to find out how that all plays out. Now, in theory I could just leave right now, but there was a target of opportunity. The enemy commander from their reinforcements had run really far ahead of the rest of the army and was sitting where presumably the army wants to go. So I thought I'd just send all of my anti-cav up the hill quickly to give him a little fight before the rest of the enemy army arrived. We're charging uphill and we're tired and we're charging through trees, so really our first attack doesn't do very much, but once the melee's going we'll have the advantage. We've got Great Guard in there who are very effective against enemy cavalry. We just have to do this quickly essentially, because the enemy's army is about to arrive and they'll have plenty of anti-cav stuff and just archers and things in general that can damage our already tired units. They are right here and the first arrows are starting to fly, so I needed the enemy general to die right about now, and fortunately enough he does die right about now, so we can now make our escape with our remaining cav before those infantry units engage. Our cav are slowed down by their tiredness and the trees, so the infantry actually had a chance to catch us even as we started running away, but we just about get away with it there, and we can now flee these units right back to the other side of the map to join up with our army, and once they're ready they can line up with the whole army on the very edge of the battlefield and then all withdraw at once. I do it like this because if you withdraw in dribs and drabs, the game might decide to just delete a couple of units that are still on the field at the end because they technically rout rather than withdrawing due to army losses. Anyway, so that is a crushing defeat according to the game. We are going to have to take a loss here, but we did achieve our objective, or at least we almost did. You can see there is still an army standing there. It's just like 3 or 4 light cavalrymen who survived the battle. Although in this case, because this unit's half dead and because we killed 2 units from inside the castle, the AI will just bring that unit back inside to replenish it, and that will allow us to go for the castle in the future. So this plan will ultimately turn out to have been successful, and perhaps we'll see that in the next episode. Over a year of preparation for a push to the capital had not been enough for the Takeda. They were not ready in time to stop the Otomo preparing their defences, and so each time they set foot over the border, they lost thousands of men. Among them was the last legitimate ruler of the Takeda domain, Kazuyoshi, and then, as if signalling things to come, the man who assumed his powers was also struck down. The time for careful strategy was over. The Takeda could well lose, and so an all-or-nothing attack became their best hope. So that is all. Thank you very much for watching, and very special thanks to the OfficiallyDevin patrons for making this happen. We'll be facing a big decisive battle as everything on the front line converges onto a single battlefield in the next episode of Barbarian Masters.